Hey guys, it's Friday, 7:24 p.m. on February 15th, 2019. And what I want to show you here are a couple of images of what it looks like when men claim to possess the moral authority over other men. What you're looking at are the images of the Inquisition, which is a 700-year period of time in Europe that the kings and queens of Europe delegated the use of their military and local law enforcement to the Catholic Church, who didn't have a standing army, which is what's so interesting about this. It's why in most of these pictures you're going to see some dudes dressed like Catholic officials, probably a local priest and a bishop or somebody. But really, all the Catholic Church still has to this day are a handful of priests. They've got some bishops, the cardinals, and the Vatican. The rest, you guys, is just whatever local authorities want to extend to them to impose their will on other people. Now, fortunately, the Inquisition did end when the Bible finally got into circulation, thanks to men like William Tyndale and Martin Luther, who for the first time in about 600 years finally got the Bible printed again in translations of the local tongues that people were speaking. Because people had stopped speaking Latin. They had stopped speaking Greek. They may have had copies of the Bible all over the place. But if they didn't actually speak those languages, they couldn't read it. But men like Martin Luther and William Tyndale and other people finally got the Bible into widespread circulation again. And guess what happened? The tyranny of Catholicism, the tyranny of men who pretend to speak for God on earth, the tyranny of men who impose their morality on other men finally came to an end. And it did ultimately finally come to an end. So let's look at the time frame here that the Inquisition took place. By 1184, it's safe to say that men were no longer colloquially speaking Latin. Now, this would continue that the Catholic Church had this tyranny and this power to convince men of the most horrific lies about Christianity, when actually they were the seed of Satan on earth, literally. It wasn't until like the 15th century here. That's when the Bible was printed in English again and in German. And within 100 and 200 years, our country was established. See, what happened was, guys, on the heels of this terrible Inquisition and on the heels of just the most morbid, disgusting, torturous history of theocracy, where men imagined to have the authority to impose their morality on other men, on the heels of that grossness, our founding fathers came over to this country completely dedicated, whether they were Satanists, theists, Masons, or Christians. All of them agreed on one thing. We needed to establish a government that did not go by morality. We were a government that governed the government, not morality. In fact, the most important thing of our Constitution is to secure the individual liberty of an individual to do what we call self-determination. Now, men like John Adams realized that this was going to be a really big problem because there are only two directions the self-determined people can go. Fortunately, for the first 150 years of our country, we were a country that was governed by the morality that we pretty much agreed to in the Bible. So we were a self-governed people, and the morality that we deferred to was in the Bible. Unfortunately, the other direction that men can go when they have the right to choose wherever they want to do, they can go to the lowest common denominator. And that was what John Adams was warning us about in this quote. When you have two directions of self-governance, you can go and be moral, you can go in the direction of procreation, raising a family, doing the morality that's in the Bible, or you can go in the direction of gay marriage, sexualizing children, aborting children after they're born. You go in one or two directions. If you go into the wrong direction, our country is not going to be able to govern itself anymore, which is where we are now, which is precisely why I asked in my video, now that we are being dragged to hell, sexualizing and murdering our children, and we have completely abandoned any moral compass that is offered in the Bible, who, I ask, who is going to claim to have the moral authority to tell other men what to do? It was a rhetorical question because obviously, as I'm showing you here, when men claim to possess the moral authority over other men, this is the type of morality that they impose upon each other. So it really was a rhetorical question. I will quote to you from what John Adams actually said in 1798 in his letter to the Massachusetts militia, where he said, "Should the people of America once become capable of that deep simulation towards one another and towards foreign nations, which assumes the language of justice, like social justice, like climate justice, like environmental justice? Yeah, that kind of language about justice. And moderation, while it is practicing iniquity and extravagance, and displays in the most captivating manner the charming pictures of candor and frankness and sincerity. But while in reality it is rotting and rioting and rapine and insolence. Let's look and see what the word rapine and insolence means. Insolence means rude and disrespectful behavior, and rapine means the violent seizure of someone's property. Oh, kind of like how we're behaving today. Then this country will be the most miserable habitation in the world. Wow. He called it. He called it 200 years ago, folks. He said it's because we don't have a government that's armed with the power capable of contending with human passions, human passions unbridled by morality and religion. Guys, I'm pretty sure that what we're looking at here are human passions unbridled. Our celebration of the most debased behavior on earth is quite literally human passions unbridled. And it's terrifying. What we see unfolding before us is very terrifying. And John Adams warned us that avarice, ambition, revenge, and gallantry would break the strongest cords of the Constitution just as a whale goes through a net. Our Constitution was made only for a moral and religious people. It is wholly inadequate to the government of any other. Now, if I were to have met with John Adams and had today's view of history, I would say, hey, John Adams, it also would be unable to restrain a people who are ignorant of their history. Because in our ignorance of our history and our inability to recognize the distinction between a Catholic and a Christian, which is quite literally like the difference between the man who comes in with an axe to murder his family and the police officer who turns the corner to save him, they are quite literally, one is life, one is death. If you don't know the difference between a Catholic and a Christian, guys, you are doomed to fall for the very lie of Satan that man can deliver man from evil. It cannot happen. But you know who's planning for that? I'll tell you who's planning for that. It's this cabal here. Let me read you this quote of Kissenger, and then I'm going to take you to this video by Red Elephants, Vincent James. I love this guy. He's a very sweet man. I love the fact that he is concerned about the moral issues that are facing us, but I fear his ignorance about history, and I fear his applaud of letting a leadership lend itself to the moral authority of Catholicism. Because we've seen how that ends, guys. We see what happens when a government is willing to surrender its law enforcement to the authority, moral authority of Catholicism. So let's just check out this quote here and make sure that we're not falling for the exact same thing that Henry Kissinger said would happen. And I say to you, it's going to happen because men are unfamiliar with their Bible. Men do not know the difference between a Catholic and a Christian. And men are all too willing in their ignorance about what the Bible says to trust men to lead them to morality and deliver them from evil. Let's read this quote. Henry Kissinger said in 1992, he was being taped at a Bilderberg meeting. He was taped by a Swiss delegate, unaware that he was being taped. He said, "Today Americans would be outraged if UN troops entered to Los Angeles to restore order. But he forecasted that tomorrow they will be grateful." Now, I've heard this quote used to get people to buy food storage because of an EMP or because the Federal Reserve is going to collapse and we're not going to have any food or a civil war is going to break out, so buy more bullets. I've heard it used for very practical reasons, but guys, if you keep reading this paragraph, you're going to see that's not what he's pointing to. He says they're going to be grateful because this is especially true if they were told that there's an outside threat from beyond, whether real or promulgated, that threatened our very existence. So whatever that threat is, it's going to threaten our very existence. He said it is then that all the people of the world will plead with their world leaders to deliver them from this evil. Think about that, guys, because if you're a Bible-reading Christian, you know that the only person who can deliver you from evil is God the Father through his Son, Jesus Christ. There is no man on earth that can deliver you from evil, and yet, for some reason, Kissinger is forecasting a day when men are going to be so ignorant of the contents of their Bible that they are actually going to plead with world leaders to deliver them from whatever real or promulgated threat of evil is threatening their very existence. Let's continue. He says, the one thing every man fears is the unknown. When presented with this scenario, individual rights will be willingly relinquished for the guarantee of their well-being granted to them by a world government. You want to know the difference between a Catholic and a Christian, guys? A Catholic knows that a Christian knows that no man can ever lead another man out of evil. A Christian knows that only Jesus Christ can lead man out of evil. A Catholic is convinced that a pope will. The pope will. They call their pope the Holy Father. They believe in the world government of their Catholic Church, and that, my friends, is a terrifying prospect because that is exactly what we're seeing. Let's listen to what Vincent James at Red Elephants points out in his applaud of a Catholic leader using his military to exact Catholic morals on its people.
Jair Bolsonaro has pledged to remove any references to LGBT plus people from school textbooks and exams. Bolsonaro and his government have revealed plans to erase all mentions of homosexuality, feminism, and violence against women from the text and is set to allow the military to take over some public schools, according to the Associated Press. So this is very good news here because he's actually using the military. He's actually invoking the military dictatorship of quite some time ago to go and remove this Marxist filth from the schools.
Okay, now this should be a problem, guys. This should really be a red flag to you guys. Because since when has a military ever been needed to change a transition from one edition of a text to another? I remember being in a handful of different schools over history where we went from the 14th edition to the 15th edition. And all we did was hand over our books. We didn't need a military to execute it. There is something else happening here. And against the backdrop of what I'm pointing out here, guys, that this agenda that is going to be laid out, and this guy here, Kissenger, he's on the planning committee for the end days. He is on the planning committee of Armageddon, folks. Okay, he's working for the enemy, and yet for some reason, somehow we were able to get this quote from him that foretells a day that Americans who preserve and believe in the preservation of individual liberties above all things are going to be so freaked out about the evil that is being promulgated against them that they're actually going to look to world leaders to deliver them from this evil. Because they're going to think that world leaders will guarantee them their well-being. You guys, that is so messed up. The only way this could possibly happen is if nobody understands the dynamics behind this. And I'm telling you, since this guy, Vincent James, who's a very sweet man and I'm not upset by him at all, but since this guy, Vincent James, has posted this video with nearly 70,000 views and only 120 people get it, only 120 people understand that this is a big problem, what he's applauding here, we're close, guys. We're really close to a day when our ignorance about the distinction between a Catholic and a Christian and the foundation of our country and the warnings that John Adams actually laid out and our abject ignorance about anything that has to do with the Bible. I mean, some people actually said in comments to me that the Catholic Church changed the Bible. You guys, that's abject ignorance. You people better learn about the history of the Bible. You guys are idiots if you think that. Christianity says no man has the ability to impose his morals on another person. You guys have got it so backwards that it's terrifyingly close to this. And even worse still, guys, let's listen to what he has to say when he does not distinguish at all between Christianity and Catholicism.
Are doing lots of things that have to do with Christianity and things like that. And then Jair is Catholic, so Jair Bolsonaro is Catholic. And I mean, this is a world leader that is one of the most religious world leaders we have seen in quite some time. I mean, you can go throughout history and you look at, just within the past 20 years or 30 years or so, look at all the presidents of the United States of America. They don't even come close to how religious this guy is or how religious his wife is. Like true religion. Like they actually are religious instead of just going out and talking about God and saying they're religious and saying they're Christian and appearing in front of the media at church and things like that. No, these people are hardcore religious. These people follow God. They talk about...
Well, see, the thing is the problem that I'm going to point out to you guys is that Vincent James does not know the distinction between the Christian God and the Catholic God. So I lay out a couple of differentiations here for you. There's a big difference. They are mutually exclusive, antithetical one to the other. The God of the Bible is the Holy Father. The God of Catholicism is also the Holy Father. However, the Holy Father that they believe in is a human being who created these kinds of tortures. The God of the Bible is the Holy Father who sent his only begotten Son, that whosoever should believe in him should not perish but have everlasting life. For God so loved the world that he gave that Son, that if you believe in him, you won't perish. Come to the light, he said. Come to the light. But men love darkness rather than light because their deeds are evil. And that's the problem, guys, is that people don't realize that this is actually what's happening now. People are actually applauding the use of troops to restore order because they are so deluded that they actually will plead with their world leaders to deliver them from this evil. And if you don't think that's happening, guys, read the comments here. Read the comments here. I totally agree with this Brazilian president. Brazil should be one of the leading economic superpowers. I'm happy for Brazil. You know, Brazil is turning into the country that I would vacation in. This guy is out trumping Trump. Love it. I wish that Americans were patriotic as the Brazilians. Guys, this isn't patriotic. This is completely ignorant of the Bible. This is completely ignorant of world history. And this is completely terrifying because this is exactly what Henry Kissinger said was going to happen. People, you don't have to believe the Bible to actually know what it says and to understand the backdrop of history against which it actually established this country. Not because we used the Bible to become a moral country, but because we relied on the Bible so much that we didn't need a government that established morals. In fact, it was such a role, it played such a role in the foundation of our country that John Adams actually said, if we don't have that moral religiosity and faith in that Bible, guys, it's over. And guess where we are? We're at the point when I actually ask a day in a video, I ask him one day, who has the authority to stop this downward spiral? And nobody even understood the question. That, my friends, that is terrifying.